Thank you for watching part 1 of the Biennial Bearing in Apples on Demand webinar series. In this session, you will hear Tim Plozzo from Agriculture Victoria share research outcomes about the crop load effects on biennial bearing in apples. This hot innovation project, Physiological, Metabolic and Molecular Basis of Biennial Bearing in Apple, is a collaboration between Agriculture Victoria and the University of Hohenheim in Germany and is funded using the Apple and Pear Levy. To view part 2, please visit the video and webinars page on the APAL website. If you have any questions for the speakers, please contact Rose Daniel, the Technical Manager at APAL.
My name's Tim Plozzo. I'll be presenting today on the crop load effects on biennial bearing and fruit quality. This is a project I worked on together with Dario Stefanelli, who was formerly from Agriculture Victoria Research, now with DPIRD WA, and Rebecca Derbyshire, who's from New South Wales DPI. Now, biennial bearing is a phenomenon whereby fruit trees put out large numbers of flowers and have large numbers of fruit in one season, generally referred to as an on-season, and then as a result of that, they can then experience an off-season the following season where they don't flower as much, and then also, so as a consequence of that, they produce less fruit. Yeah, this project was ran over 5 years. It was mixed between basic and applied science. Our German collaborators worked on the biology and biochemistry of biennial bearing, and whereas in Australia we studied the physiology of field applications of crop load and biennial bearing, and we looked at crop load and its effects on fruit quality, evaluation and adaptation of a predictive thinning model, and also we did some work looking at the physiological carbohydrate reserves of the apple trees, although unfortunately due to the current COVID lockdown, the data from that isn't currently available yet. Okay, so the crop load experiment started in the 2015-16 growing season and ran for 5 seasons. We looked at 2 cultivars. There's Nakota, which is marketed as Kansi, and also Rosy Glow, which is one of the cultivars sold under the Pink Lady trademark. The experiment consisted of 30 trees of each variety. They were 3-year-old trees at the start of the experiment. And we applied 5 treatments, like 5 crop load treatments, and had 6 replicates of each treatment. And in the last season or 2, the canopy of the trees approached the being fully grown. Okay, so the training system that was used was a open tutura with 2 rows of trees, 1 metre spaced, growing on wires which started approximately 80 centimetres above the ground, and then the wires were spaced at approximately 50 centimetres, and the branches were approximately 50 centimetres wide along at each level in the lower parts of the tree, and the upper parts of the trees are a bit shorter, around 30 centimetres per branch. So the crop loads we applied were based on recommended grower practice. So we had the I guess the middle treatment out of the 5 was standard grower practice. Then we had 50% of that, and 1% of that is the lowest treatment. And then we also had a 100% and 50% and 200% of the normal grower practice. Then in subsequent years, we either maintained the same crop load treatment for each tree, or we alternated between a low and a high treatment, or a high and a low treatment, depending on the crop load that the tree started with. And then we alternated those for each season over the 5 years. During the growing season, we studied a range of things such as fruit growth, shoot growth, fruit colour, as well as other measurements associated with growth of the trees, such as light interception, leaf conductance, and the ripening of the fruit in the lead up to harvest. And after harvest, we measured the fruit yield, fruit quality, and also maturity. Now, just to give you an idea of the number of fruit that we were leaving on the trees each season, we have the 5 seasons worth of fruit numbers there, and as you'll see, as the trees got older and larger, the fruit numbers increased. And if you look at the rosy glow table in the final season, you'll notice that the 2 highest crop load treatments had roughly the same numbers of fruit after thinning. And that's because of the stress of having such high crop loads on the trees over a number of years. The highest crop load treatment wasn't able to produce enough flowers for us to leave the desired number of fruit on the tree that we wanted for the experiment. And this is just the average fruit weight produced from each treatment in the final growing season. And as you'll see, as the crop load of the trees increased for each variety, the fruit weight decreased. Now, expanding out the Nakota fruit weights to look at the constant and variable crop load treatments that were applied to the trees, you can see some interesting effects in the 2 lowest crop load treatments. The constant crop load trees produced heavier fruit than the variable crop load trees. And this is to be expected, given that the variable crop load trees had a correspondingly high crop load applied the previous season. And so as a result, they were unable to produce as large apples as a constant low crop load treatments for that season. And we also see the converse in the second highest crop load treatment, where the variable crop load produced heavier apples than the constant crop load, because in the previous season it had a much smaller crop load. And then looking at the highest crop load treatment, there's basically very little difference between constant or variable crop load trees, which is most likely due to the fact that the crop load is that high that the tree isn't able to do any better than approximately 160 gram fruit weight. Okay, now looking at return bloom for the trees, which is one of the, I guess, key determinants of biennial bearing. Here we have some graphs of the flower clusters produced by the trees in a given season, plotted against the crop load that the tree had in the previous growing season. And on the left-hand side, we have the 4 seasons, 2016, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, and 19, 20. And as you can see, each season, as the crop load the previous season increased, the flower clusters produced by the tree in the current growing season decreased. And we saw the same effect in both Nakota and Rosy Glow. And then for the final season, the 2019-20 season, on the right-hand side, you can see that Nakota in particular, the flower clusters were reduced to such an extent that we weren't able to achieve the upper crop load that we'd been applying over the course of the 5 years of the experiment. In the final season, we weren't able to, or there weren't enough flowers on the trees to enable us to apply a crop load of 12 fruit per square centimetre trunk cross-sectional area. Rosy Glow saw very significantly reduced flower clusters in the higher crop loads, and in some trees they were struggling to achieve the upper crop load of 16 fruit per square centimetre. Now looking at some other results, here we have the graphs of the bricks, or the sugar content of the fruit versus crop load for both Nakota and Rosy Glow. As you can see, there's quite a strong trend for a decrease in bricks as the tree crop load increases. And looking at colour, this graph is of the Rosy Glow chroma, which is taken from the LCH colour space. Chroma relates to colour intensity, and so this is plotted against crop load for the Rosy Glow trees. As you can see, there is a trend towards decreasing colour intensity as the crop load increases. Okay, now just a bit about the evaluation of the MaluSim fruit thinning model. Now this is based on recommendations from the US based on carbon balance of the trees. And Rebecca looked at adaptation and evaluation of MaluSim to Australian conditions. She looked at 140,000 simulations from green tip and up for a period of 80 days, and compared the weather data between USA and Australia. And this, the table below here just documents some of the weather conditions that might be experienced and the effect that has on the carbon balance of the tree. And then on the far right, the effect that'll have on the efficiency of chemical thinners that you might apply to your tree or trees. Now, from Rebecca's simulations, going back over 10 years of data, she only found one instance where the trees had a negative carbon balance. And what this means is that under Australian conditions, chemical thinning is likely to be less effective than predicted by the MaluSim model. Now, just looking at some outcomes of the experiment. First of all, the crop load affects next year's return bloom, and even small deviations from the optimal crop loads can affect the response. And importantly, this effect becomes more pronounced each season as the trees become more stressed. And higher crop loads cause a reduction in fruit size, in fruit sugars, and the intensity and quantity of red and yellow colour in exposed fruit indicator, and a general decrease in the intensity of red colour in rosy glow fruit. So in conclusion, Australian conditions do not put apple trees into negative carbon balance. So chemical thinning is less effective than in other parts of the world. And using high crop loads to obtain smaller fruit could instigate biennial bearing and will produce less attractive fruit, lower quality. Lastly, I'd just like to thank Peter, Bob, and Kevin Sanders for allowing us to have this experiment on their orchard at Three Bridges in Victoria. I'd also like to thank my colleagues from Agriculture Victoria Research, Christine Frasina, Kristen Pitt, Payzang, and Joanne Bowie for their assistance in the field and the lab throughout the course of the experiment, as well as a number of RMIT summer students who helped out. And I'd also like to thank our collaborators and the funders for this project. Okay, thank you.